Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Allora, buongiorno a tutte e a tutti. Con grande piacere abbiamo oggi qui la nostra Ruth Beckermann, regista che abbiamo scoperto noi in questo periodo grazie a questa avventura che è nata qualche mese fa con Luca Mosso, Andrea Inzerillo e la Cineteca Nazionale, nella persona di Maria Bonsanti che lavora alla Fondazione Centro Sperimentale di Cinematografia. E devo dire, il Goethe Institute, grazie Heidi e Roman che traduce. E devo dire che questa è un'esperienza molto, molto bella e formativa, perché stiamo parlando di una regista attiva da tantissimi anni, ha cominciato a fare cinema negli anni 70, negli anni 80, ha sempre mescolato un'attenzione nei confronti della storia e della memoria, a una precisione dello sguardo personale e una capacità di stare dentro la grande storia attraverso individui singoli, individui piccoli, il valore della testimonianza, il valore della testimonianza che ieri ha detto una frase molto interessante durante l'incontro all'università: non confondiamo la memoria con la storia. Non confondere la memoria con la storia è, diciamo, un punto di partenza interessante, perché se tu hai chiaro questo concetto, il cinema di conseguenza non è un cinema dimostrativo, bensì è un cinema che lavora proprio sull'emersione della memoria da parte dei testimoni della storia. Ed è questo che lei fa. In molti film lei, Ruth Beckermann, e questo lo dico da regista, fa un lavoro interessantissimo proprio sullo stupore e sulla relazione con le persone che incontra, perché lavora sulla coralità. Non so se volete tradurre per Ruth questo che io sto dicendo, ok? Sulla coralità, quindi lavora su l'insieme, che però non è massa, non è mai massa, ma è sempre un insieme fatto di individui da rispettare, da ascoltare. Si sente nel cinema di Ruth Beckermann che l'ascolto è importante tanto quanto la costruzione delle immagini, così come l'elaborazione attraverso l'ascolto non solo delle piaghe del proprio paese, ma anche proprio della identità dei singoli che si riconoscono o meno nella storia del proprio paese, nella propria storia, nella storia dei genitori. Per chi non è entrato da poco a scuola, quindi per i ragazzi dei corsi un po' più avanzati, secondo e terzo anno, troveranno, diciamo, i ragazzi del secondo e del terzo anno troveranno delle affinità anche nei discorsi che usciranno oggi tra alcune questioni chiave del cinema di Ruth Beckermann e questioni che abbiamo attraversato anche negli anni scorsi, nell'anno scorso e 2 anni fa. Parlo per esempio delle connessioni con la storia, diciamo, con quello che è stata la memoria della Shoah, con quello che è stato l'atteggiamento, diciamo, dei bravi cittadini nei confronti del nazismo e non solo. Non voglio dire troppe cose perché chiaramente c'è tutta una giornata per parlare, c'è tutta una mattinata per parlare con Ruth, e soprattutto abbiamo illustri ospiti che fanno questo di mestiere, fanno i critici cinematografici e gli studiosi, e quindi io mi pongo sempre come mediazione, diciamo, tra una regista e gli studenti, da regista, da persona che lavora nella formazione, e facciamo insieme cinema documentario. Quindi c'è Luca Mosso, direttore del Filmmaker Festival di Milano. Diamo il benvenuto a Luca Mosso, che è il nostro ospite. Diamo il benvenuto ad Andrea Inzerillo, che ormai è di casa del Queer Festival, e soprattutto diamo un grandissimo benvenuto, un grande abbraccio a Ruth Beckermann, grande regista. Prego Ruth, prego. Questa conversazione si intitola Rileggere il tempo, ed è stato anche bello trovare la chiave per questa conversazione, e lì in questo caso abbiamo chiesto aiuto ad Andrea, E nella parola della rilettura del tempo chiaramente c'è tutto quello che abbiamo detto prima sostanzialmente, diciamo, come gestire il tempo della storia, ma anche il tempo individuale dell'emersione della propria memoria. Mi fermo e lascio la parola, non so a chi vuole, come volete gestire la cosa, io mi metto qua e ogni tanto faccio le domande pratiche, quelle proprio sul cinema, sul fare, proprio quello sporco, ecco, sullo sporcarsi le mani.
Ok, allora comincio io forse per dire un paio di cose a partire dal titolo. L'idea di intitolare questa masterclass Rileggere il tempo era un tentativo di tenere insieme due dimensioni, da un lato quella del tempo e dall'altro quella della parola lettura, che sono due dimensioni molto importanti all'interno del cinema di Ruth Beckermann. Ieri appunto all'università con Alessia Cervini e Matteo Di Figlia abbiamo forse maggiormente ragionato sulla questione della storia e della documentazione della realtà, e quindi abbiamo fatto un discorso più culturale e politico. Oggi forse potremo stare sempre naturalmente dentro temi simili, ma dare un maggiore spazio alla dimensione della temporalità e delle temporalità che attraversano il cinema di Ruth Beckermann e la questione della lettura. E allora, diciamo, per cominciare questa masterclass, io vi proporrei di vedere un estratto da un film di Ruth Beckermann che io trovo straordinario, che si chiama Vie en Retour del 1983, perché cominciamo appunto da lontano, e cominciamo da lontano perché questo tentativo di cui parlava Costanza, di tenere insieme la memoria e il valore della testimonianza e la storia, porta questa regista a rileggere la storia dell'Austria, ad avere il tentativo di rileggere la storia dell'Austria. E una cosa che mi ha colpito, allora partirei forse prima del film da un ricordo di un libro che avevo letto, che in qualche modo fa cominciare un inizio di declino della storia austriaca da uno stesso evento di cui parla Franz West nell'estratto che vedremo. Il libro si chiama Il frutto del fuoco, è il secondo volume dell'autobiografia di Elias Canetti, e Canetti dice questa cosa qui. Canetti è un autore stranamente, e forse può essere anche questa una domanda, stranamente assente, almeno dal punto di vista non è mai nominato nei film di Ruth Beckermann. Mi chiedo se sia una presenza importante per lei, ma vi leggo brevemente l'estratto. La mattina del 15 luglio 1927 ero rimasto a casa. Nel Burgerland c'era stata una sparatoria, alcuni operai erano rimasti uccisi. Il tribunale aveva assolto gli assassini. L'organo di stampa del partito di governo dichiarava o strombazzava che con quell'assoluzione era stata emessa una giusta sentenza. Fu proprio questo oltraggio a ogni sentimento di giustizia che esasperò enormemente gli operai viennesi. Da tutte le zone della città i lavoratori sfilarono in cortei compatti fino al Palazzo di Giustizia. La reazione fu assolutamente spontanea. Salto. Il Palazzo di Giustizia andò in fiamme, la polizia ebbe l'ordine di sparare, i morti furono 90. Sotto l'influsso del massacro di quel giorno, Karl Kraus aveva fatto affiggere dappertutto a Vienna dei grandi manifesti nei quali, rivolgendosi al capo della polizia, Johann Schober, responsabile di aver ordinato la sparatoria e responsabile dunque dei 90 morti, gli intimava di dare le dimissioni. Fu un atto individuale. Kraus fu l'unica figura pubblica che prese un'iniziativa. Soltanto in Kraus il coraggio fu pari all'indignazione. I suoi manifesti furono in quei giorni l'unico nostro sostegno. E continua dicendo che quel giorno, 15 luglio 1927, segna la storia della vita di Elias Canetti. Elias Canetti, a partire da quel momento, decide che nella vita dovrà fare una cosa, cioè scrivere un libro. Ci metterà tutta la vita. Questo libro si chiama Massa e Potere, ed è il tentativo di comprendere il funzionamento della massa. Lui dice: io mi sono identificato con quella massa in protesta, sono entrato a farne parte e la cosa mi ha anche spaventato. Allora ho provato per tutta la vita a capire che cos'è questo meccanismo di identificazione con la massa, e Canetti è uno scrittore straordinario anche perché, nonostante abbia scritto tante cose, ha scritto un solo romanzo che si chiama Die Blendung in tedesco, in italiano Auto da Fé, e che racconta di un'auto da fè. Quindi ancora una volta questo evento dell'incendio del Palazzo di Giustizia di Vienna è l'evento che segna la vita di Elias Canetti. Vediamo un secondo l'estratto di Wien Retour, perché vedremo che forse una rilettura possibile dell'Austria comincia anche per questo personaggio. Sì, sì, facciamo introdurre Wien Retour, forse prima. Do you want to say something about this film before watching?
Well, it was my the first film I made as a filmmaker before I worked in a collective, and it was shot on 60 millimeters. So what you see is probably not the quality you're used to. Yeah, maybe we speak afterwards.
Ok, il primo film che ho
It's
fatto...
okay if I speak English and you understand? Okay.
If you don't need a translation, I will not translate. Lo facciamo in inglese? Ok, grazie, thank you so much. Vai.
Ich war mit der 7. Klasse fertig. Das war die unruhige Zeit für mich. Ich habe also in Griechisch einen Nachzipf bekommen und ich musste lernen, aber in der unmittelbaren ersten Zeit nach dem Ferienbeginn hat man sich gedacht, schnell so oft als möglich baden gehen, weil dann im August, September kommt, muss man sowieso lernen. Und so bin ich also an dem damals für mich ganz normalen, berüchtigten 15. Juli 1927 von zu Hause weggegangen. So wie man damals weggegangen ist. In der einen kurze Hose, in der einen Hosentasche ein Stück Brot, in der anderen Hosentasche entweder die Badehose oder eine kleine Unterhose, die man dann gewechselt hat, Hemd, Sandalen. Und ich war auf dem Weg rüber, irgendwo in die Nähe. Ich habe in der Großen Glockengasse einen Freund gehabt, ich habe in der Tscherningasse einen Freund gehabt. Ja, also es muss so gegen 8, halb 9 gewesen sein, ein wunderbarer Tag. Und wie ich so über den Praterstern, zum Praterstern zukomme, rübergehe, kommt auf einmal dort eine Gruppe, maximal 50, 60, 80 Leute, Arbeitsanzug, teilweise haben sie Spaten in der Hand gehabt und so weiter. Und ich bin zugegangen und habe gefragt, wo marschieren Sie denn hin? Die haben gesagt, habt ihr nichts gehört? Die Schattendorfer Mörder sind freigesprochen und es wird gestreikt und demonstriert, die Tramway steht. Und sie sind also über den Praterstern am Tegetor vorbei, die Praterstraße, und ich bin mitgegangen. Meine nächste Erinnerung ist, ich bin in einer starken Menschenmasse, das war nicht eine Demonstration, zusammengeballte, marschierende Menschen von der Universität Richtung Rathaus, Parlament marschiert, und an der Seite der Straße war da und dort ein berittener Wachmann zu sehen, die wurden fürchterlich gejagt. Wir haben dann in der Nähe des Burgtheaters, ich habe das nicht so selbst gesehen, weil ich noch drin war, es war ein Pfui, ist losgegangen. Später hat man dann erfahren, waren so ungefähr 6, 8 Wachleute, die versucht haben, so ein Kordon zu machen, die Leute aufzuhalten. Und wir haben das durchbrochen. Und von der Ferne haben wir schon Rufen gehört und so eigenartige Rauch war da. Und man konnte nicht recht weiter. Das war so eine gewisse Zeit, ein Durcheinander. Ich erinnere mich sehr gut, neben mir sind so ein paar Arbeiter gestanden, die haben gesagt, naja, der Schutzbund muss endlich her, die paar Wachleute, die können uns doch nicht aufhalten und so weiter. Und bis erst der Schutzbund von Wiener Neustadt kommt, das sind also die radikalsten immer gewesen, dann werden wir es ihnen schon zeigen. Und gerade dieser Moment der allgemeinen Verwirrung war offensichtlich die Zeit, wo Schober, der damalige Polizeipräsident, nach Bewaffnung seiner Leute mit Karabinern Befehl zum Schuss gegeben hat. Und das Schießen war völlig unprovoziert. Auf einmal wurde geschossen. Später wurde gesagt, es ist provoziert worden aus der Masse. Wir haben nichts gesehen und selbst wenn ein Schuss gefallen ist. Und es wurde geschossen und wir haben also gespürt, dass das Schießen also irgendwo aus der Parlamentsnähe kommt und haben gedrängt runter Richtung Oper, den Ring runter, und sind gelaufen und es ist von hinten in die Laufenden hineingeschossen worden und ich erinnere mich da und dort, heute weiß man das nicht, das war so ein Drängen, man ist übereinander gestolpert, aber es sind Leute gefallen und liegen geblieben. Und wie wir also im Weiterlaufen waren, hat sich also, ohne dass das die Demonstranten gemerkt haben, bei der Burgtorhöhe, dem Museen zu, ein weiterer Kordon von Polizisten, die nun die nach vorne laufenden versucht haben, hineinzuschießen. Ich für meine Person weiß nur, dass ich also das Gefühl einer fürchterlichen Angst gehabt habe, dass man also hilflos ist. Wir sind also, die Menge, der Teil, wo ich dort gerade drinnen war, wir sind hinein, ich weiß nicht, wie die Gasse, die zum Volkstheater hinaufführt, heißt das, ist die Museumsstraße oder so, dort hinaufgelaufen. Mittlerweile, das Volkstheater war eingerüstet, hat sich dort, da sind wir wieder zum Stehen gekommen, dort war wieder eine Schussbarriere. Dort hat man also eine der Grausamkeiten dieser Tage, einen kleinen 11-jährigen Buben, der oben am Gerüst gestanden ist, haben Wachleute so lang gezielt draufgeschossen, bis sie ihn runtergeschossen haben. Und wir sind dann wild Richtung zu den Museen hinaus. Ich weiß nur, welche Zeit es immer war, es muss so am frühen Nachmittag gewesen sein. Ich bin nach Haus. Mir hat es also die Lust genommen, die Schneid abgekauft. Ich bin nach Haus, habe versucht, also meine Freunde zu finden und das ist mir sicher auch gelungen und man ist zusammengesessen und hat irgendwo auf irgendetwas gewartet, auf den nächsten Morgen gewartet. Man hat so ein fürchterliches Gefühl der Hilflosigkeit gehabt. Das war ja noch nicht da. Sind da und dort einmal ein Arbeiterfunktionär überfallen und ermordet worden. Aber das in diesem mächtigen Wien, knapp vorher hat es eine Wahl gegeben, wo die Sozialdemokraten eine ungeheure Menge von Stimmen gehabt haben. Aber noch etwas, es waren unmittelbar vorher die Gewerkschaftswahlen der Wiener Sicherheitswache. Und diese Wiener Sicherheitswachbeamten haben mit, ich würde glaube, 5/6 Mehrheit freigewerkschaftlich, also sozialdemokratisch gewählt. Und auf einmal wird von diesen selben Leuten geschossen und der Schutzbund war nicht da. Es war so ein Gefühl der Hilflosigkeit, der Desorientierung. Und man hat also schon gewartet, wie es weitergeht. Und
Ok, questo estratto è particolarmente significativo dal mio punto di vista per tante ragioni e quasi solo potremmo stare su questo e su questo film in generale, per diciamo, la capacità narrativa di questo personaggio straordinario, per aver segnato un punto a partire dal quale la storia dell'Austria comincia a cambiare, ben prima che il cancelliere Dollfuss prenda il potere, ben prima dell'Anschluss e così via. E ci sono diciamo, alcuni segnali che secondo me sono interessanti. Il primo è quello di cui parla Canetti. Un solo intellettuale prende posizione pubblicamente contro il capo della polizia, Karl Kraus, ed è un'altra delle figure che mi interesserebbe sapere se interessa Ruth Beckermann. E questa cosa mi fa pensare, e lui dice, no, ci sentivamo spauriti, non sapevamo esattamente cosa fare, eppure i socialisti, no, avevamo un governo socialista, che cosa poteva far immaginare che le cose sarebbero cambiate così velocemente? Due suggestioni mi vengono in mente. La prima riguarda un'altra intellettuale, Ruth Beckermann, che in qualche modo contro l'oblio del suo paese decide di lavorare e fa una serie di film. Ne cito soltanto uno, Jenseits des Krieges, East of War, ma cito anche l'installazione urbana di cui abbiamo parlato qui 2 giorni fa, The Missing Image, in cui prende posizione pubblicamente dicendo non basta fare un memoriale contro la guerra e contro il fascismo, se manca qualcosa di fondamentale, ed è quello su cui lei lavora, cioè raccontare qual è anche la complicità del popolo austriaco in quello che è successo. E quindi diciamo questa è una prima cosa. La seconda, anche per introdurre al film che vedremo oggi pomeriggio alle 18, che cosa la spinge in un periodo apparentemente lontano a ritornare più di 30 anni dopo Paper Bridge di Papieren e Brücke a parlare del caso Waldheim e che cosa le fa sentire appunto questa necessità di tenere temporalità diverse su uno stesso piano. Il film su Waldheim che vedremo oggi pomeriggio è del 2018 e è interessante comprendere per quale motivo una regista sente l'urgenza nuovamente di tornare a raccontare un fatto di 30 anni prima. Many things. I don't know if you understand.
I understood.
Okay, perfect. So,
What?
I don't know.
You asked me a question?
Not really.
So what shall I say?
If, for example, people like Karl Kraus and Canetti were important for you, or are you?
Yeah, of course they are. And of course it's interesting that you made this connection to the book by Canetti. But I think, well, speaking about films about history, I think one has to rewrite or tell history again and again, because every epoch and every generation has another look and another perspective on history. And I made this film in 1983. I wouldn't make the same film today anymore, because at the time when I made this film, all what this man, Franz West, tells was not known. It was like a hidden history. So it was important to have someone to tell this history, and all the material we found at the time, the photographs and the film clips had not been shown before. So at that moment, this film provoked something and told something new. I wouldn't make this film today because today this is common knowledge, and there are many books about it and films. So for me, this film is not very timely anymore. But of course, it's good that it exists, and he was a wonderful narrator and a very interesting personality. But I wouldn't treat the archive in the same way anymore, and many other things that changed in my filmmaking, of course. So when I made another film, the one about Waldheim, which is a film made only with found footage, I had a different approach to the archive. I mean, I didn't take it as documents only, but also in a critical, I had a critical gaze on the archive, and I talked to the archive. So I didn't just put it in like here to kind of illustrate what he says. I wouldn't do that anymore because we worked a lot about the approach to the archive, and I'm not, at the time it was quite naive approach.
Questo passaggio, rivedendo questa parte iniziale, cioè la tua capacità e il tuo interesse a ascoltare, no? E si capisce come ci sono pochissimi tagli, no? E come la parola prende forma e diventa racconto. E questo io credo che possa interessare ancora adesso, perché no? Come ci si pone di fronte a una persona a cui chiediamo di rievocare il passato, e lui rievoca anche lo stupore che in quel momento ho provato. Sono stato tradito, no, dal mio governo, e sembra che sia ancora lì, no? La rendi viva a distanza di tantissimo, no? Quando lui viene chiamato. Ecco, questa, se c'è una formula, qual è il tuo atteggiamento con le persone che chiami davanti alla macchina, e metterli in condizione di rivivere non soltanto il racconto, ma anche l'emozione di quel racconto, che è molto forte questo passaggio, e rivedendolo, è un po' che non vedevo il film, è ancora indignato lì, è ancora sorpreso, questa è la cosa, l'indignazione ok, ma è sorpreso di essere stato tradito. E quindi mi è sembrata, cioè, spesso accade nei tuoi film che queste emozioni vengano rivissute in quel momento. Che preparazione hai con le persone che ieri sera, per esempio, hai detto che non avevi mai incontrato le persone di Mutzenbacher, no? Prima, mentre in questo caso credo che sia stato molto diverso. Ci puoi raccontare la preparazione?
Yes, of course. At the time I worked different. Today at the time we really prepared a lot, and I had to learn about history myself, to ask him questions, and but the project changed because the idea was to make a film about a certain part of Vienna, which was very leftist, socialist and communist before the war, and quite Jewish as well. So it had a special atmosphere, and I wanted to make a film about the workers' movement in this part of Vienna. And I had in mind to make a film about 3 different people, 2 men and a woman. And but then it turned out that he was such a wonderful narrator that I changed the project and I made the film only about him. So we were shooting in his apartment, and there were only 2 situations, one with daylight for the first part of the film, when there was still optimism, and he tells us how he, as a young boy, joined already the socialists, and all this culture of workers' chess clubs and workers' football and so on. It was Red Vienna at the time. And this was a daylight situation, and then when it goes towards fascism and down, we had another lighting situation with artificial light. So that was it, and he sits in another place of his small living room. So this was the situation, and only later in the editing, of course, we put in all this material we had found in different places, because it was not catalogized, it was not in one archive at the time. So we're searching in different party clubs of the Socialist Party and the Communist Party to find the film clips, which was very interesting. But today everybody knows those film clips, so I wouldn't use them anymore in the same way. But that happens many times. As I told you yesterday, the music for Paper Bridge, at the time Arvo Pärt, when I made the film, after this film, Arvo Pärt was just discovered. So his music was new, and it fit to my film. When I hear today, I have the feeling, okay, you use the music that everybody uses or knows, but that can happen, that, when you are provocative or avant-garde, after a time, you become mainstream.
Ma funziona ancora?
It works.
Funziona ancora?
Yeah, it works. If you have question or commentaries, just... Well, this film is, like I call it today, the first part of a trilogy I made, because in the end of this film, Franz, when we came again to shoot for the last time, he told us, with all this talking to you, I remembered the fate of my Jewish family. He never talked about himself as a Jew, and he had to leave Austria after when the Nazi period started. He went to England, but as a communist. So he identified as a political refugee. And when we came, he had put up, this cassette recorder, a big one, old one. And he said, when I was alone, I recorded a cassette with all the fate, what happened to my family. And we filmed us sitting there and listening with him to the cassette he had recorded, and you hear really the whole history of his cousins and uncles, and he had this capability really to build up a story with the drama in the end. So the last person he talks about was his mother, who was murdered in a camp. So it was very dramatic and a sad ending. And the film had started with a traveling shot in the morning, entering Vienna, and we ended it with the narration of the fate of his family by leaving Vienna by night. So that's also the title, Return to Vienna. So it makes a parenthesis for the film. Yeah, and after this film, I had the feeling, okay, he talks about his Jewish family. What about my feeling about being Jewish and born in Vienna after the war, after all that had happened there? And I made a film about, let's say, Jewish identity of the second generation, which was quite a big project for me and took quite a long time, because it was difficult to develop it. It was difficult for me to shoot it. I shot in it has actually three main parts. One was going back to the old stories of the shtetl of Poland when there was still Jewish life, the stories Josef Roth and others, even Canetti came from Bulgaria, which was part of a place, part of the Austrian Empire. And going back to these stories, so I wanted to shoot that in winter in Romania. And another part was how is the memory of the Shoah, how can you show memory today? And I shot this part during a shooting of an American miniseries called War and Remembrance. They were building up the camp of Theresienstadt in a town in Yugoslavia. It's complicated, and they brought extras from Vienna to play the inmates of the camp. So my idea was to shoot with the people, the Jewish extras, how they feel and what they remember while they are playing inmates of a camp. This was the second part, and there was a third part of the film. I mean, it was not constructed in three parts, but my ideas were the Jewish identity of that time was constructed with the old stories, with the memory of the Shoah, and the fact of Israel. So all this was part of the film. Yeah, so and then there was a third film, because after that film, Paper Bridge, I had the feeling I didn't talk enough about Israel. You know, there's always something left which gives you the possibility to make another film. So then I made the film Towards Jerusalem, which was a film about going to Israel and finding out what happened with the dream of the, of the Jewish country and Zionism and so on. So I chose the concept of a road from the Mediterranean towards Jerusalem and filmed for 5 weeks encounters on this road or near this road. So in retrospect, I would say it's my Jewish trilogy in a way, which was not, I didn't have the concept to make a trilogy, but one film led to the other, and that's what happened.
Diciamo, questa idea appunto di concentrarti sull'identità ebraica nasce dall'incontro con Franz Weintraub e successivamente, diciamo, appunto il film successivo è Jenseits des Krieges, dove la questione diventa, e forse già a partire da Wien Retour la questione diventa non più come quello che facevi con il collettivo con cui lavoravi all'inizio, documentare il presente dell'Austria, ma la consapevolezza che per documentare il presente dell'Austria bisogna necessariamente relazionarsi con il passato e forse cambiare l'immagine del passato. Jenseits des Krieges è un confronto nello stesso tempo con il presente e con il passato, e anche il lavoro su Waldheim è questo tenere insieme temporalità diverse. Io ho una domanda tecnica. Ci sono alcuni registi che hanno come dire, quasi una firma in alcuni gesti cinematografici. Se noi pensiamo oggi al cinema di Aung San Suu, per esempio, lo zoom che compare costantemente nei suoi film diventa una sorta di firma d'autore. Nei tuoi film, a partire dall'inizio e dalla fine di Wien Retour, ritornano spesso dei travelling. Volevo sapere se li hai mai pensati come una sorta di firma o se è capitato invece di utilizzarlo molte volte in molti film e poi adesso per esempio nei recenti film non più.
Yeah, well, many of my films are essay films, and also traveling uh, journeys, and traveling was part of my filmmaking, or is part of my filmmaking. And so the traveling shot, it's true, they are in many of my films, even in Die Geträumten, the dreamed ones in the middle, there is this taxi journey in Vienna in the rain. Yeah, somehow it's hard to explain. Somehow it conveys a feeling, a feeling of time passing, and also a possibility for an off text. And I like the images in a traveling a lot. I like long shots anyway, long sequences, and if it's well done, which is not easy. I mean, today many camera people think you just put the camera out of the car window and you shoot, but a good traveling shot is a lot of work, and you really need a good driver, because the driver makes the shot actually in the right rhythm, in the right distance to what you want to see. That it's not too blurred and close enough, so it's not easy. And I used it in many of my films, not in all of them, not in my last one, not in Waldheim, but in the Dreamed Ones, which is a film shot with two actors in a radio studio. There is only one shot outside, and that's again this shot I filmed myself in a taxi, but it's not a traveling shot. It's more. I shot it with my phone. It's just on different sides, on the side and in the front. So it's more a shot to show that 7 years passed when these two lovers and two poets didn't see each other. So time had to pass, and it was also a sad moment for both of them. So rain and traveling was for me the right mood.
I want to ask you something about East of War. If you can tell us why you decide to make this movie, and how do you feel with people when you see the movie now, and how was your approach to them? Because it's very interesting. You said yesterday that you are not used to have the relationship with people before shooting, so it's very. It's a big surprise for us, because they started to talk about the history, to talk about themselves, to talk about the memory as a fire you began when you shoot. Like, wow! So can you tell us something about it?
Well, I told you about my so-called Jewish trilogy, and I must say, Andrea already said it, that maybe a bit similar like Italy, Austria didn't admit that it was very much part of the Nazi perpetrators, but tried to call itself a victim of the German Nazis. And it took a long time for Austria to change this official perception of itself. And for a long time I always said to my non-Jewish friends and colleagues, why don't you make films about your families and the Nazis in your family and so on? And actually not much happened. So when I heard that this exhibition about the crimes of the German army, which was conceived in Germany and had toured many German cities already, would come to Vienna, I thought, okay, this is a good moment and a good location to make a film about the perpetrators or the crimes of the Wehrmacht. And this exhibition was an enormous scandal everywhere, because for the first time it showed with 1,000 photographs that the soldiers were part of the crimes against partisans, against Jews, against civilians, against women, and so on and so on. You see it on the photographs. And I decided to make this film very spontaneously. No money, no time to get money. It was 5 weeks before the exhibition would open in Vienna. So I found a friend who is a cameraman, and we decided to make it the two of us. And I remember he he had a laptop that he had exchanged for a high-8 camera, which was at the time a format, horrible format. So we had this high-8 camera, and I had the mic, and we spent every day in this exhibition. And I had anticipated that happened, the exhibition came in 1995. So people, young men who had been young men and soldiers during the war, had which age? If they were, let's say, 25 in 45?
They were very old.
25 plus?
70,
75
17,
or
80,
70, yeah.
someone
Some around
older
75
also.
or 80 or whatever. So they were still alive, and they were not in the working process anymore. So I thought this is maybe the last moment, but a good moment to get them and make them talk. Because I think it's very important to get testimonies from, not only from the victims, the resistance or the Jews, but from the perpetrators, from the soldiers and the Nazis and the fascists. And so actually we've just been there, and they really came. They were many people coming to the exhibition, and many elderly men came with a friend or two friends to see the exhibition, maybe also to see if they are on one of the photographs. So I approached them and asked them what they have seen or done. And it was very easy, because the photographs served like a trigger to their memory. I mean, they were emotionalized to see all these photographs, and they needed someone to talk to. So it was like, in church or something like that. So, of course, many of them lied. And that was interesting to me, actually, because I wanted to make a film about memory and to show the different ways how people construct their life story, to live with their life story. So sometimes someone said, I heard that people were shot here in the woods. And then he goes into detail and tells you the story in a way that you think, well, he has seen it, or he has been there, or whatever. Yeah? So that is very interesting to see how the different people lie, if you want, or construct their life stories. But there was, of course, no preparation. I just... They just talked. I mean, I didn't talk to them before. And I almost never, I think it's not good to talk to people before you film them. because that takes away the spontaneity and they just repeat themselves. So I'm also against all these exposés or treatments where filmmakers already met everybody, they will film it afterwards and already write parts of an interview. I know that film fans love that because they always want to know exactly how the film looks like. But I think this is very boring, and the exposé or the treatment should be just the beginning of a road. Yeah? It should put down ideas, but then during the making of a film, the whole thing can change completely, and in the editing room, it can change again. So I never, in the case of Franz West, I did, but after that, I never spoke. I speak with people about the weather or their kids, but I don't speak with them before the camera is on.
I think it's very special in this movie that you don't show in the movie the photographs, the stills. So everything is out of the camera, is over. So you ask people to talk about this stuff, but you don't see the pictures. So it's like to work with our memory also, because we watch the movie, we see the movie, and what they say is related with with what we imagine, because we don't see the pictures. This is very great choice as a director, I think. Why did you decide?
Well, the reason, you see the pictures in the background, blurred.
Yes, of
on
course,
the walls,
but it's very, it's in the background.
I didn't cut to the pictures because I had decided to make a film about memory, and I didn't want to juxtapose the pictures and what people said, because then it would be a completely different focus if you show like facts, photographs, and what they say. And I wanted to focus on the different ways memory works. So, and I think to make documentaries for the cinema is mainly making formal decisions that are coming from the content you want to focus on. So if I want to focus on memory, I decide not to show the pictures, and many times the decisions are negative ones, not to show something. I think that makes a big difference to journalism or TV work, where everything that people can get in the film is in the film. Interviews, photos, whatever, yeah. So I think to find the appropriate form of a film is the most important work when one makes a film for cinema, and which makes a difference to TV.
Io vedo una connessione fra questo lavoro e Mutzenbacher nel dispositivo, cioè tu convochi una realtà altra e filmi le reazioni delle persone che o lo vedono nel vecchio film e invece in questo caso lo leggono, e quindi porti il passato nel primo caso e invece il passato ma mediato dalla letteratura nel secondo, e in quel momento succedono un sacco di cose. E ci hai pensato che questo dispositivo fosse un po' una variazione della vecchia idea o no? E come sei arrivata a questo interesse per quello che accade in quel momento, avendo preparato e convocato un sistema molto articolato a priori? Anche in The Dreams One, ovviamente.
Yeah, well, as I said here, the photographs were the trigger for the emotions and the memories. And in Mutzenbacher, I took this porn book from 1906 and had men reading parts of porn literature to make them speak about sex today, their sexuality, their views on sex, and so on. So maybe it was the same idea. I didn't think when I, only in retrospect you know that you there is some connection. But it's true, it's the same idea to, in the case of Mutzenbacher, it was a casting call, and man came and had to read this text and then talk.
No, volevo chiederti qualcosa di più su The Dreamed Ones, perché appunto rispetto a quello che si diceva prima, è evidente che a te interessa capire come funzionano le persone, cioè come pensano, come reagiscono, come ricordano, eccetera. E nel film The Dreamed Ones forse il meccanismo è un po' quello, però come sei arrivata a decidere di filmare un documentario su 2 attori e non invece un film su un carteggio? Cioè perché la scelta di filmare loro due che provano, cioè che stanno recitando e che imparano a recitare? Cioè, volevo capire se c'è una connessione e come sei arrivata a decidere di fare questo film in questo modo. Forse non è... Beh, qual è stato il processo per arrivare a The Dream Ones? Più semplicemente.
And the distance between text and...
Qual è stato il processo per arrivare a The Dream Ones? Qual è stato il processo per decidere di fare il film in questo modo?
I thought a lot about what would be my way to transfer literature, this correspondence between 2 poets, into a film, and not make a fiction film with historical costumes and so on, which I'm not really interested in. And I had this idea to find 2 very young people, because the 2 poets have been very young when they met, in the beginning of their 20s, to read these letters, not to play the 2 characters, but to have this distance of reading, because I thought that this love story was, and the texts are so strong that they would have an impact on the 2 people who read them. So I wanted to have this double, like 4 characters, this double couple, like a mirror, yeah, and to also film the reactions of the 2 readers. And so we had these conversations with the 2 actors. Actually, she is not an actress, she is a composer and singer. Her name as an artist is Soap and Skin. And she's quite famous, and they didn't know each other, the 2 of them. And I think it was good not to take 2 actors, because actors have always a special relationship with each other and know each other, maybe. So they didn't know each other. And I wanted to film, and we talked with them, and they agreed also not only when they read the letters, but in between. So their reactions when they talk with each other about the letters or about their tattoos and whatever. So it's like you have two couples in the film. Yeah, that was the idea actually.
E lei filma anche l'aria che c'è fra di loro e l'aria che c'è fra il testo e l'immagine, attenzione. Cioè non filmare delle cose ma anche quello che ci sta in mezzo, questo è molto importante perché è quello che ci dà il senso della realtà. Dopo aver parlato molto di parola, la parola degli altri, io vorrei chiedere a Ruth come organizza la propria voce, perché in molti film, e in Waldheim lo vedrete, la presa di coscienza che c'è nel personaggio che abbiamo visto prima è la sua, e a quel punto la storia, l'organizzazione del film è condotta dalla tua voce, che guarda le immagini. Ecco, io volevo chiederti anche come operativamente, loro sono studenti di cinema, come costruisci la tua voce e quanto è lunga, sappiamo tutti che è difficilissimo, no? Scrivi, non scrivi, appunti, quante volte la reciti, quante volte tagli in montaggio, insomma, com'è questo, immagino, lungo lavoro?
Yeah, it's much more long way to make a kind of essay film with a voice, off voice, than a film constructed like The Dreamed Ones or Mutzenbacher, because you have a clear concept, or even East of War, a clear concept like a Kammerspiel, one space, one location, and that's it. So it's more like theater or drama, and so the process of filming and editing is much shorter. In an, let's say, essay film with different locations and ideas, but a lot that happens during the shooting. Actually, the main work, or a lot of work, happens in the editing room, constructing the final film or finding the form of the film. Even in Waldheim, which is a film with archival footage, I had so much material, and I thought in the beginning that I will start with the lies and the problems in Austria right after the war and finish with the extreme right government that was there when I made the film, you know. So we took us all the months of summer, 2 months, just to watch the material. And only during this process in the editing room, I decided that the concept of the film will be the 3 months before the elections of the president, of Waldheim actually. And I will use these 3 months as a construction for the film. And in between these events during the 3 months, I can have all these excursions in topics that were related to the bigger topic. So I had to find this form, and then it became possible to edit the film, because if not, you just drowned in the material. So in an essay, and the same happened with Paper Bridge, and the worst in finding the editing and the text was A Fleeting Passage to the Orient, a film I shot in Egypt, and which is only images and scenes and travelings. So no interviews, no people who talk in the film. So we couldn't start editing the film without the text, because how do you start, how do you finish? Nothing. So I had to, of course I write before the shooting and in between some notes, but the actual text I had to write during the editing. So I started to write, then we started to edit, and then it was like going back and forth, because writing for a film is very difficult, because you always have to consider the images. And if your text is like doubling, illustrating the images, then it's not good. So it has to come close to the image and then go away from the images. So it's a very difficult process, and it took a long time, and I wrote maybe 100 versions of a text, you know. So I think that's writing for the voice, the off voice of a film is difficult, because it's not a commentary as on TV. It must have some literary quality, and also some subjective approach. It's not just so-called objectivism, which doesn't exist, but TV makes us think it exists, but it must have a special style and a special voice.
Hai un lettore di fiducia? Qualcuno che fai leggere i tuoi testi prima di chiudere? A reader,
yes,
a favorite reader, yes.
No, but I mean, I try them in the editing room. So my editor is there,
Yes.
and
Your
it's a he, but he is, no, I go with the text to the images, and then I try it out. And then I already have the feeling that it doesn't work. But of course I show when we have a rough cut, I have always some confidenti, or how do you say, to show them the rough cut and have their feedback and criticism, of course. With Waldheim, I had a different way to do the text. We had a microphone in the editing room, and I talked to the images. And then, of course, I polished the text and recorded it again. But that was good, because when you're alone at home or in a cafe writing, you forget the image in a way, even if you have seen it 100 times. So it was quite a good thing to do it right in front of the image.
Vedrete, se vedrete oggi il film, c'è la stessa emozione che abbiamo visto nella parola altrui. E questo è quel dispositivo di filmare davanti alle immagini ha prodotto anche quella forza emotiva.
Your editor is still the same, or you changed a lot of editors, or you work with one person and you are confident with him?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the editing process?
Yeah, I like the editing process a lot, I must say, because you have already material. I edited many films with a woman who was a fiction editor in the 50s, 60s, and learned a lot from, actually on film. Till 2000 I worked on film, 16 or Super 16, and she was a real film editor. So actually we also edited East of War, which was horrible, because it was this high 8 material that you had to transfer to U-matic to edit it, and it was a horror. Because it was not digital, it was like the images were falling apart, and it was horrible. And then when I did Homemade in 2000 and it was digital, she said she doesn't touch these machines. And I met a young guy actually, who wasn't an editor, and he wanted to become an editor, but so he was sitting with the machine, and my old editor and me were sitting behind him and told him what to do. So that's how he learned editing from her. And he's now the best editor in Austria. Everybody wants him, and I work with him since 2000 for every film. And every year he gets, whatever film he edited, he gets the prize at our National Film Festival for the best montage. His name is Dieter Pichler, and as we know each other already a long time now, it's really fun to work together, because you know, when you don't have to explain anymore what you want and too much, we just have, we can make a lot of jokes in the editing room, which is always good for the film also, to see it with a sense of humor. Anyway, I think that's important for an editor, to have a sense of humor.
And also for directors. Otherwise, they
That's true.
offend.
That's true. That's true. I'm always happy if there is something funny or amusing happening during shooting, because that's part of life.
I wrote it down to help me. So I wanted to ask if the path that you may take your main characters was parallel to a path that you took in a different way, and if this path led you to the last films that you filmed. You understand? The path is like, yeah, the path. The path. Yeah, sorry.
You mean the past of Austria or my past?
Yeah, the path. Yeah.
Oh, my film? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. In another way. Yeah, sure. Okay, that's what I wrote, but I also can also try to say in another way. So I wanted to ask if the path that you may take to your characters, so the consciousness of memory of the history, was parallel to a path. Which was the path that you took while you were filming your films that made you closer to your consciousness, if there was a parallel parkour? Yeah, sure. Scusate, sì.
Maybe
Sì.
you want to ask about the process of your consciousness about the subject of the movie. For example, if your character, okay, for example, in Mist of War, they are conscious, consapevoli, no?
Sì, consciousness.
They are aware of what is the real subject of the movie, okay? And how do you feel about your process about the subject of the movie? I mean, se c'è un processo di sviluppo.
Sì, esatto, cioè nel senso
Allora, diciamo l'italiano e poi mi traduci in
sì, scusatemi, cioè volevo provarci, ma
se il processo di consapevolezza
che
del
è
protagonista
esatto, è parallelo a
al
un
tuo processo di consapevolezza nel
esatto.
momento in cui decidi di fare
Esatto,
questo da dove viene questa domanda?
e poi soprattutto anche perché, diciamo, la curiosità era poi il link che legava, se c'è un link che lega i primi film, o diciamo, a quelli che sono gli ultimi. Sì, infatti scusatemi, sì, scusate.
Also, was heißt das? it depends on the protagonists. I mean, I'm actually, with every film I learn something about life and about human beings. That's one of the reasons I make films, and especially documentaries, but also in fiction films. I mean, whenever you work with people in a group, you learn a lot about people, how they function, how they make decisions, and so on. And it's true that with this, in the process of this film, East of War, with these soldiers, former soldiers, I learned a lot, maybe most, because I found out how people construct their life stories, or how you shift from seeing to hearing, and from hearing to not knowing, and so on. It was not easy to film them because I didn't want to discuss with them. That doesn't make sense. I'm not interested in making films where I confront the other with my opinion. I leave this to the public who sees the film. To say it in a very rude way, I consider all these people as material for the film, and I want to show their different ways to speak and think and so on. And I think that's much more interesting than my opinion. I mean, in the way you film people and edit the film, you give your opinion anyway. But of course, every film is making my life richer. The process of making it and the result, the reaction of people, being in Palermo with you, I mean, all this is part of the process of filmmaking and may lead to a new idea for the next film. I always have the feeling that one film has to be finished to have the idea for a new one, in a way. So that's, yeah, even if a film has no success, yeah, that also happens, then it's also a way to find out why and to go on to a next film. I don't know if I answered your question.
I will try in English. Then if I fail, I try in Italian. So I just wanted to share something that I've seen in your movies, and that it's also something that happens in your since you were. No, I just have to refresh the thoughts. So in your way of doing, your way of facing things, so we could say your style, it's the same thing that I've seen in your in the content of your movies. That means that I feel like if you are a person that is watching things, and maybe in one movie you make it explicit also, and you say that you are just observing stuffs, that it's also like a privileged position for a person. And what I see is that you are always like asking reality. You are always waiting. Reality gives you answers to your questions. And it's also interesting how you live inside your movies. I was like impressionated by your speech about how do you face the technique. So how do you face the fact that you are talking on your images? And it's always like seeing the same process, because you are always questioning what you see in front of you. So it's not just in reality, but it's also like facing the editing. So it's like I see reality, I see things happening. Then I see, after this, I see what I've done. So I see the footage. And in the footage, I see new things that I try to give back with words. And in that stuff, I see a lot of, like, it's a movement. It's a continuous movement in which we can feel that you could, like, go on and on. And so it's visible that you could make a lot of movies, like, for keeping on going in one direction, that I think it's the direction that you are walking in your life also. So it's like, we can also feel like a step-by-step process in your movies. I could go on because I've seen many of those things. As you do it, it's like it was inspiring for me for this reason, because it's like pointing the attention to a way of facing things. That it's always like we have to do those things we are doing because we want to develop. We want to go on with our process.
Yeah. Thank you, because that's. I try to do what you say, and I think the main thing is to be open and to be ready to change your concept every day, and not stick to what you wanted to do in the beginning. And yeah, I think it was Bertolucci who said you during shooting you lose the film, and in the editing room you find it again. When I reread what I wrote in the beginning to get money, and I never take that very seriously because it's just a text of seduction for a jury, to get the money, and only then I start really thinking how I will make the film. But when I read it after the film is finished, I find out that it was the beginning of the road, you know. So, but sometimes you have a crazy idea and for a concept, and you find out after 2 days of shooting that it doesn't work. So then it's better to change it than to go on with something you don't really feel it anymore. So I'm quite maybe I'm easily changing things, and what you said is true. In the editing process, you see many things because you have more time. That you didn't really see during shooting. Shooting is a crazy time, and you just have to take whatever you get, and not. I prepare a lot before shooting by reading books or thinking about many things, and during shooting I have the feeling I forget everything, and I just go, you know, because I mean you don't have much time. Time is expensive. You have to get what you. And as Chris Marker said, whenever your heart is beating, it's good, shoot. So that's what I do, and only in the editing room I'm quiet again and have time to really think about what I did.
I just want to add one stuff that it's related to the fact of moving, always moving. So it's like the traveling physically and shooting also. That I think it's something related to this attitude, because it's like always being on movement. I felt it.
No, it's well, when you shoot in one location like the Dreamed Ones or Mutzenbacher, you're not moving anymore. And I also like to shoot in one location and not to shoot for 5 weeks in a row, and you know, maybe it has to do with age, but I very much also like to have a clear concept and just shoot for 1 week. That's fun too. I mean, then you have the problem that you got too much money and you have to give it back. Happened to me already.
Qualcun altro?
Grazie. I have two questions. The first one is more practical. As a young filmmaker, I ask, how did you produce your movies? I mean, how did you find money? Of course. And the second one is more philosophical. I was wondering about if there is a relationship between you and theater. I mean, I was wondering about it yesterday, watching your movie, and even listening about your older movies. There's always something about playing another role, and I think it's very interesting. I mean, it makes me think about Oppenheimer, the act of killing, as I don't know. I'm really curious about it. If there's something.
Well, producing. Of course, in the beginning, I didn't have any money. I mean, the first films we made in a collective where we got 60 mil material from other producers, just some roles, and no money at all. We also founded a film distribution company with no money. Everybody had a job, and we just did it. And for Return to Vienna, this one you saw, was the first film I really had a budget. So, and now it's easier, of course, because I made many films, and we also have this system of when your film is successful and is at a certain festival in Berlin or Venice or Cannes, and you get a prize and you have enough spectators, then they give you money for the next film. So I'm now in the nice position to have already money for another film. I don't even know what I want to do with it, but I'm producing my own films since the year 2000. So this money goes to the producer, so I can also give it to another filmmaker and produce the film of someone else. But now it's not, and my films are not that expensive, so it's not so difficult for me to finance the films, and I try to do that only in Austria with money from the city and the film fund and TV and so on. And then, if I'm lucky, sell the film. So, for instance, Waldheim, I produced myself only with money from Austria and sold it to Arte for a lot of money and to many TV stations. And of course then we have to pay back, but slowly and only a percentage. So for me that works. I don't want to say that this would work for other people, but I didn't want to produce myself, but I didn't find a producer in Austria with whom I thought would get money in a better way than I could do it. I'm quite good in writing a text for a jury and convincing them to give me money.
You have your own company, right?
Yeah, I'm a very small company and just produce my own films. Now for the first time I produce a film of a young woman because I had money that I couldn't use myself. And she is my assistant and worked with me already for many years and wanted to make a film. Does this answer your question for producing? Concerning okay, theater, I never worked for the theater, but Once a French theater director asked me if I would stage East of War with actors in a theater in Paris. Then it never happened. Theater is very problematic today, I think, and not many people go to the theater, and it's, I don't know, at least in the German-speaking countries, it became quite boring, unfortunately, but theater is interesting, and yeah, of course, these are theatrical forms, Mutzenbacher, or to stage something in one setting is a dramatic theatrical form, but I'm not. You talked about the actors. I'm always interested in the difference between what people say and the face and the gestures, which many times tell you exactly the contrary. So I think this is a big power of cinema, to show the faces and the gestures of people, and the words that can be, that not always tell the truth, but you can feel it, and that's so interesting. That, I mean, nobody. I wanted to make a film once with a woman who had run away from Czechoslovakia after the Russians came in 1968, and I wanted to make, because she told the stories one day with tears, one day funny, and the next day neutral. So I wanted to show that you tell the same story in a different day or phase of your life in a different way. There is not only one truth. There are many and many nuances, and I think cinema is a good way to show that.
You didn't, right? You didn't?
No,
No.
never made this film, no.
Volevo chiedere una domanda rispetto al film di ieri sera, di cui non so pronunciare bene il nome, Wurzenbach, riguardo come sei arrivata a scegliere innanzitutto quel testo, che cioè, è una scelta ben precisa di approcciare il trigger narrativo attraverso un testo del genere, e diciamo, tra tanti testi erotici che potevano avere altri approcci, e anche perché hai scelto quel processo per arrivare a parlare di sessualità dal punto di vista maschile, diciamo.
Well, this text is, I don't know many porn texts, but this is a special one, and a very Viennese one also. And even if the book is not known anymore among young people, the name Mutzenbacher is still like a symbol for porn. And there's a Mutzenbacher bar in Berlin, and there was one in Vienna, so it's kind of part of culture and tradition. And I read this book when I was a kid, very young, and it was an important text for us. So I thought it's, and I was interested to make a film about men speaking about sexuality today, and I thought it's a good idea to have them read parts of this text, to open them up, loose them up. Yeah, and also to show the difference between this text and our times today. We have a different perspective and perception of what is appropriate in sex, and about the way we speak about sexuality.
Il fatto che sia il film il libro sia sulla rivendicazione del piacere femminile. È stato importante per il femminismo austriaco? Il libro è sulla rivendicazione del piacere, del diritto al piacere della donna, no?
Well,
No.
I don't know. I know only that women love the film, and many girlfriends called me and said, "Great that you make a film about Mutzenbacher." I didn't even know that everybody read it, and also women read it. Yeah, actually, we thought it was more a fun project during the pandemic, and my editor and me, all the time we thought nobody will show this film. Because, yeah.
Io intendevo il libro però, the book in your, quando eri giovane, cioè da giovane femminista di sinistra, quel libro lì è stato importante nella formazione o era un divertimento, insomma?
No, I read this book long before I was a leftist feminist.
Okay.
I read this book when I was 10 years old or something like that. I mean, this book, we were looking for information. There was no internet, so you were searching hidden books in the bookstores of your parents or friends. So, no, we read this book more for information.
A qualcosa tipo l'effetto che ha avuto un libro come Porci con le ali per il femminismo italiano o per cioè, Lidia Ravera o qualcosa del genere, se lo stesso libro aveva...
Forse io li ho letti nello stesso anno,
Okay.
però non lo so. No, Porci con le ali è un libro molto consapevole, no? Questo...
È in un periodo ben preciso e poi anche portato in film da Pietrangeli, no?
Is there a book like Mutzenbacher in Italy that is
There's a book
very
about,
known?
like
a porn book?
in the 70s, written by a feminist, a communist feminist, and it was like important for the Italian leftist movement, I think.
Yes, but you don't know il manuale dell'Allegra Battona.
No, I don't
Because
know.
nobody knows, but I read it when I was very young. It was a great book because it's really a manuale. How do you say manuale? Yeah, the Allegra, you know, Allegra, funny, yeah, prostitute, and it was quite the same. Because in this book they sign rules how to get pleasure, how to what's your right to the pleasure and so on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anonymous,
No,
of course. It was published by Anonymous. Nobody knows.
Porci con le ali, pigs with
This was not a porn book.
It was an erotic book, and there was a movie by Paolo Pietrangeli, which was after a film not a film director, a TV director, and but it was important in that period, and many people knew him.
Roman, I will ask you to translate because I have to say something which is difficult to me in English. Maybe I don't know. I can try, but you are here, so maybe you can ask. You can help. In questo libro quello che sorprende è che comunque si vengono descritte delle situazioni di potere maschile sul corpo femminile della bambina e quindi in qualche modo di quello che si può considerare normalmente un abuso. Yeah, ok. E la cosa che è interessante è che durante il film, durante le letture del libro da parte dei protagonisti del tuo film, loro cercano di nascondere un piccolo piacere che provano in questa lettura, che è anche il piacere non tanto, cioè sono spiazzati dal piacere, dalla descrizione del piacere femminile, ma nello stesso tempo, diciamo, confermano questo immaginario di potere nei confronti del corpo della bambina, del corpo femminile. Scusate, non mi ricordo più. Sì, e quindi sostanzialmente è un film che mette l'accento sulla parte oscura, molto indicibile in qualche modo della scoperta del desiderio da parte femminile, ma che linka, connette fortemente con il potere del maschio sul corpo della femmina, perché non è una scoperta del sesso o la scoperta tra bambine, per esempio, no? Le bambine tra di loro, le bambine col bambino, eccetera. C'è sempre qualcosa che è, per certi versi, appunto, tabù, no? Tabù, però che fa parte, diciamo, della cultura, cioè nelle famiglie consapevoli i fratelli, il fratello e sorella a un certo punto vengono separati, il fratello sta da un'altra parte perché partono gli ormoni e tu non lo puoi sapere mai che può succedere, perché, no? E non so, mi interessa questa cosa se hai qualcosa da dire su questo punto o no.
Well, the book was written in 1906, and actually, I think 1 year before Freud's discovery about child sexuality, that children are sexual beings, happened and was published. So it was the time when people started to talk about sexuality of children. And of course, that's complete. I mean, that's if we take that book seriously as a document, it's abuse. Of course, I mean that's this child. The book is, in my opinion, it's written by a man, and it's written in the form of a female memoir. So it's the old prostitute who remembers her childhood and youth and talks in it's me, in the first person. So it's a very sophisticated invention, and in the book she starts to have sex, I think, at the age of 3 or 5. I mean, that's completely crazy. And always, all the women in the book want to have sex with every man, everywhere, every time. So the whole thing is a male fantasy, of course, that women want men all the time and have orgasms every 2 minutes. So, but it's a fantasy. So it's a novel. And I think it's important to make a difference between what people do or what they fantasize. And if someone gets pleasure out of reading these fantasies, and why not? I mean, that's not, I think fantasies should not be forbidden. And as one man in the film says, when he sees a young woman from behind and likes her body, and then he has a fantasy, he has this spark. And then she turns around and he sees that's a child, that's 10-year-old, 12-year-old child, then it stops, So, but I think it's good to speak about fantasies also and to write books about it. I don't know if this answers what you...
Sure.
Mi sembra molto interessante come quello che è un po' un ballo di fantasmi dell'immaginario maschile, dopo il tuo film diventa la realtà dei maschi che devono recitare e cambiano espressione. Questo secondo me è proprio la forza di questo film, perché tutta questa costruzione portata là davanti a un microfono, davanti a una camera, con quella faccia, con quelle reazioni, diventa qualcosa d'altro. E questa è una magia, cioè quello, no? Io ogni tanto dico che esiste il dio del documentario e che quel momento lì no, ha fatto questa trasformazione, cioè invece di fare dalla realtà alla fantasia, è dalla fantasia che arriva alla realtà e ci arriva con questa grande forza, per questo che io trovo un film un po' miracoloso.
But I was surprised that there was not one man who refused to read the text. All of them had to read the text. There is one in the film who reads it and then throws it away. But I thought that there would be someone who says, no, I don't want to read this in front of a camera. That didn't happen. And I think they read very well. They are really good readers. And there's so many different ways how they react to this text. I mean, the young men are quite different than the old ones and very open and more reflected in their thoughts about sex. Okay, and they have new problems because they get their information in the internet, and as you know, there are many pictures and it's more explicit than a text, even if the text is already quite explicit. But in images and also brutal images in the internet are quite different when one is a child and searches information.
Very simple. How did you find the man of the film? The people that are reading the text?
Yeah, we put out a casting call last year in April 21, and it was printed in 2 newspapers and on Facebook, searching for men between the age of 16 and 99 for a film made out of this book, documentary about Mutzenbacher. And 150 men applied with their photograph and their profession and age. And then we chose around half of that amount, 70, 75. Yeah. And we've found this location and the couch, and then we gave them time slots. And sometimes I filmed 1, sometimes 2. Yeah, very fast I found out that 2 on the couch is the best combination because they can talk to each other, which is...
How many days?
We shot? Maybe a week or 10 days, something like that. There was one day when we shot these mass scenes. On a Sunday, we asked the 100 men to come for 3 hours, 4 hours. And yeah, for the rest of the days, we shot in May a couple of days, and then again in June a couple of days, and one day in September. But yeah, this last day was not good, because I thought I have to repeat some things or bring some men back, and actually that's never good to repeat things. So all in all, it was probably a week or so.
Why you stopped from May to June? Why you stopped from May to June? Because you have been in editing room, or just because?
No, we had this was a cultural center where we shot the film, and they had only these 3 days. So, but it was also good it was quite tiring. I mean, I saw so many men a day, and it was quite tough to shoot it in such a short time. And yeah, we used the free days in this space. That was.
Concerning the location instead, actually the location of each of your, of the where in those films where the location is essential, because maybe there's one location. What are the features of your of the locations that what are the main features that you're looking for in a location? So what do you look for in a space in general?
Maybe I can add, I wanted to ask you the same thing about the Dreamed Ones. Why that location?
Well, in the case of Mutzenbacher, I wanted to have a kind of neutral location, not a bar and a theater, no plushy stuff, but this rough location with this couch. So and I wanted to it was not easy to find a location, because it had to be quiet, and we could have the whole space. They have it's a very big space for us alone on the days we're shooting, so there was not too much noise, only from the street a bit. So it had to be quiet, has to be quiet, and we have had to be free to do what we wanted to do. The problem in this location was that it was very cold, and and I also like this sign, Rauchen verboten, no smoking. Actually, someone in England wrote in a review of the film, the film is about Mutzenbacher, a book, porn book, and that's where we are today, no smoking. Which I think I didn't think about that, but I think it was a good remark. So that's why we choose this location. We were free to set up our casting situation with the lights and everything. For the Dreamed Ones, for Bachmann and Celan, when they were writing poems and literature, the radio was a very important media. They worked for the radio, they earned money when their poems were read on the radio. Bachmann worked as a correspondent in Roma for a German radio station. She lived in Rome for a long time. And so I thought the radio studio would be a good location. And I saw pictures of many different radio studios, and then found the best one in Vienna, with all these paintings, these fresco paintings on the walls. So that's why we shot there, and we also had the possibility to work with different microphones, the studio microphones and the lavalier and the boom, so we could really have the best sounds possible there.
How many cameras did you use? How many camera did you use in a
only one. I always work only with one camera. Why
Listen
use
to.
two? And for the dreamed ones, I also decided.
Can you say why do you use only one camera?
Why use two if one is enough? It's if you have a good director of photography, for a documentary, can very well work with one camera. And on the contrary, for the dreamed ones, I decided that there won't be a tripod on the set, because the cameraman I work with is very good when he has the camera on his shoulder and much more flexible to shoot the two young actors when they was just sitting somewhere and talking. And to move with his body, what I liked for this film, because it could become very academic when the camera would be on a tripod. On the other hand, for Mutzenbacher, we worked on a tripod because there was no reason to hold the camera if you have one, frame, and just change the lens for a close-up. So the tripod was always on the same spot, and didn't make sense to have. But why two cameras? Just makes life more complicated. I always try to find the most simple solution. And it's not the apparatus that makes the film, I think. It's the person who holds the camera or who has the concept in his mind, not all the material.
Did you film by yourself?
Yes, I filmed. I have a small Sony camera, and I did quite a lot of filming, and part of it is in American Passages when I did research, and part of it is in Those Who Go, Those Who Stay. Yeah. Or the shot I did with my phone in the in the dreamed ones. So, but I'm not filming a lot. Only when I have a project. I'm not running around with a camera. And one doesn't see it. I mean, when you have a good grading, you don't see it anymore. Most people don't see it when you have different cameras. When I started to make films with this Return to Vienna, I was quite young. I never went to film school, and DOP was like horrible and letting me know every 5 minutes that he should be the one who got the money to make a film, because I just don't know anything, and that was not very nice. And it took me quite a long time to find out that all this talk about the technique is not what's interesting to me. It's kind of also, in a way, a man's world to make themselves very important. To stress the importance of the lens and the camera and whatever. I mean, it's important, but there's a limit to it.
The character talk with you in this interview, in this conversation. The character talk with you, so you are very close to the land. This is very important to you all, of course, because all the time we talk about this kind of connection with the eyes, because so you were filming with pellicola, with with film. Cos'era? 16 mm, yeah, ok.
and you were very, very close to the land. So
Yeah, in every interview, it's the most important thing to be really close to the camera. Also in Mutzenbach, of course, because you want the regard to not to the camera, but just close. That's very important, and that's also why I don't understand why you need a second camera. I don't need to see people from profile in a film. I mean, yeah.
this is a very important question. Mare. Okay, so okay, so just say thank you to Ruth Beckermann and come back, please. Yeah, please come back. Okay, so thank you.
Venite al cinema oggi
Yeah, of
pomeriggio
course,
e
ci vediamo
stasera.
al cinema, yeah, più tardi. Abbiamo 2 film alle 6:30, no? Il primo? Alle 6 e alle 8:30. E alle 6, quindi si esce da scuola, si va al cinema a 6 e 8:30. Facile, facile. Bene, ok, grazie.